We're live, folks.
We're live. Welcome to the AWAKN Podcast with
Co-host.
Slate and Karen.
That's right. She's my mom, if anybody was wondering. And I'm the son.
Yes. And you are coming from?
I'm in Austin, Texas right now, where I currently live and reside, and probably will reside for the next decade.
Nice. And I am currently just outside of Santa Fe, New Mexico, and my background is real.
Yeah, tell them what we built out there.
Yeah, we built this really cool house, a beautiful separate studio over a garage that overlooks a mesa, and we are in the process of building another guest house and a pump house for the water and outdoor shower.
And just so everybody realizes,
a compound.
Yeah, a compound for sure. But the house she's in right now is an actual house. She's in the kitchen right now, and that is the view from the kitchen, which is lit. There's a river down there. It's always sunny. It's absolutely stunning.
Actually,
and my dad and I built that house with some help from his dad, my grandfather.
Little help from a friend.
Little help from a friend.
So we talk a lot and have some great conversations. And so we decided to do this podcast so that people could sort of get in on these conversations that we have. And so what do you want to talk about today?
What do I want to talk about today? It's a great question. I don't really have anything that's coming to mind right now. Do you have anything that's coming to mind?
I do.
Let's hit it off then.
So I was on social media today. I saw somebody post something. It was an article about how Christians are turning people into atheists.
Yeah, fact. I'm one of them.
That's interesting. So I thought that would be a great topic that we could chat about, since you were brought up being a believer in Christ, and we went to church when you guys were little. You know, we did like years and years of taking you guys to Sunday school and church and having you read the Bible and all sorts of stuff like that. And after high school, you went and did an internship at a place that was a Christian camp. Let's not name it. We'll just leave it at that.
All right. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. Yeah, I went and did I was an intern for 1 year up in Colorado at a camp that basically specializes in bringing kids closer to God, which is actually, it's great. These kids go there and they have a great time, and they meet people that they'll be friends with for a long time. And it's really a great way to introduce kids into spirituality. And a lot of these kids, well, not a lot of them, some of these kids are from like the inner city who've never experienced any sort of like, loving relationship with any higher power. And there's a lot of kids from gentrified areas, but the whole gambit of children come to this place, anywhere from it's all high school kids for the most part during the summer. And then for like a week or two, they do middle school kids. And that place, it's awesome. Let me first say that. They really do change the lives of a lot of kids. And I think that is great. On the flip side, however, as everybody knows, humans are fallible, and you just get people that think they know what the best options should be, and sometimes there's disagreements, right? Do you want me to tell the story of?
You mean like amongst the people who work there?
Amongst the people who work there, and I was thinking more in like in the Christian world in general. Okay. I mean, it's just like sometimes you see, like, you go to I don't know, like you go to a church, let's say, right? And the pastor who runs the church wants to do it a specific way. And then there's people within the church that will see it that it needs to be done a different way, right? And it's just interesting because, like, I don't know, you run into these discrepancies in how people view how they should run things. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think what I hear you saying is that they're like teaching one thing, but then how they run things is different than kind of how they make themselves out to be to others. Is that what you're saying?
For sure. Yeah, definitely that. I think it's a lot of things, but that's definitely one of them. And I think that's where a lot of people get really fed up and annoyed with the whole thing, because it's like, all right, you're going to teach me how to live this one way, and you want me to tithe, and you own 2 Rolls Royces and a 40,000 square foot house. Don't know how I feel about that, Joel.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting as well is, well, I don't know if you said it, but I know your story. And I remember you mentioning that, when they reach out to these kids in high school, they're meeting them where they're at. And
For
what
sure.
I mean by that is, if they're kids that, are off track, let's say, with drugs or, alcohol, smoking, swearing, whatever it is that, it doesn't typically seem Christian. They're meeting them where they're at. So they're not condemning the kids and saying, hey, you're bad.
For
They're
sure.
meeting them right where they're at, and then attempting to bring them into a relationship with Christ. And I think that's really beautiful, that they're meeting them where they're at, and they're not saying that they're bad because of what they're doing. However, it seems like once you're in the fold of the church or of the organization, then suddenly it seems like you're supposed to be, I don't know, perfect. Do you know what I'm saying? Like you're supposed to do things a certain way, which is kind of opposite of what Jesus did in the Bible. I mean, Jesus met people where they were at, and he did say, turn away from your sin and sin no more. But it's not like he said, hey, you better quit doing that or you can't come into the house. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is very interesting. It feels very hypocritical, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel like the church in specific, like, creates a lot of shame, and I think they play off of people's shame to where they almost use it as a way to get them to be closer to God or closer to the church, and they use people's sensitivities as a way to control them. That's how I kind of view it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I find it interesting because I do think that when you are attempting to hold someone to a perfect standard, let's say, it does create shame, because naturally people then are like, I can't do it. There must be something wrong with me, or maybe I'm bad, or I can't be fixed, or something like that. And the churches that I've been involved in, it seems like that's it. They're perpetuating something, but that's not really their goal. Their goal is to really deliver, but how they're going about it, I think, ends up, like you said, creating shame for people because they don't know how to change or don't know how to do things a different way than they have typically for many years. And ultimately, religion, I think, is kind of what you're talking about, where they get involved in control. There's a lot of religions that are they have to be, you have to do things a certain way to be part of their religion, when, you know, there's Baptists and there's Episcopals and Catholics and, you know, within the Christian community, and there's division between Christians just because I don't do the same thing that you do in my religion. And I mean, we're all supposed to be loving each other and reflecting the love of God to one another. And they get, you know, like this
blinders.
They get like a tunnel vision in their each denomination, which is divisive.
I agree 100%. And I think the other thing that I would add to that is you've got, you know, let's say humans have been around for, let's just say 20,000 years. It's a lot longer than that. But let's say they've been around 20,000 years, right? And they've been able to communicate and whatnot. So over the last 20,000 years, you have all sorts of religions that have come from all over the world, right? And every religion thinks their God is the God, right? And what I will say is I don't think any religion has the goods on God. But what I do think is that through time and traditions, that all of the religions of the world have come to a place where they are all kind of pointing people and corralling people into the same direction. You know what I mean? Where it's like, you know, almost all of them preach love. Almost all of them preach connection. Almost all of them preach, you know, having a relationship with a higher power. And I think one thing for me that really kind of changed my view on the whole thing was after I started doing psychedelics. I mean, you have some of those experiences on psychedelics and it's unbelievable. Like, you feel connected to source, you feel connected to the universe, to energy, to all these different things. And then you try and fit that in your God box. And it's like, all right, how does that fit? You know? And for me, it really doesn't fit. I think there's a lot to say with, you know, all the religions having kind of the same tenets. I think that's accurate. But I don't, in my personal belief, I don't believe that any one religion has the goods on God. I just
kind of like, and I think what you're saying is there's certain religions that, well, there's a lot of religions that will say, you know, if you do X, Y, and Z in the religion, then you're good to go to heaven. But if you're one of them, then you're not going to heaven.
Exactly. And I think every person on the planet needs to come to a realization about their life and what they believe and say to themselves, do I believe that the creator of everything is a creator of love or a creator of hate and divisiveness? Because if you believe he's a creator of love, why would anybody get sent to hell if you don't believe one thing or another? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. If you believe he's a creator that, you know, is jealous and, you know, wants everybody to believe in him, well, you know, then I guess people go to hell, but I just don't see it.
Well, and I think, I know we've had this conversation before, but for the sake of the podcast, I have a feeling through some of the things that I've experienced in my life that the different religions and different people are talking about the same stuff, but they're using different language. So
I agree 100%.
where, you know, we may say, you know, I believe in God, the Father, the Holy Spirit, you know, the Christian church or Jesus. Somebody else might say the divine or source or universe, or, you know, like in other religions, maybe they're saying Allah or Jehovah or Elohim. You know, it's like all these different words describing what may be the same thing, but we're using different words. And so in the religion, man or woman, whatever you want to say, but humans have taken language and translations of books that are supposed to be religious books or godly books that are breathed through a divine source. And they've taken these words and put them into translations that may not be exactly what was originally meant by that. And yes, there are many scholars out there who do this for a living, who, can translate and can take context from, hundreds and hundreds of years ago.
But even then, even those scholars will admit that there's transliteration errors. I mean, there's words that were back in the day that we just don't have any context for.
Right. Well, and also it's like, what did you just say? You said, what were you just talking about when
transliteration?
You said, no, before that, when you were saying what they may have said, that it's based on love or something like that, those things that they're talking about, that if you if you don't believe in me, then you're going to hell, kind of thing.
Oh, sure.
I think that if you look at some of the translations of the Bible and the Torah from the Jewish faith is actually the Old Testament of our Christian Bible. And when you look at some of the things that are in there, these are stories and examples that are written. I think that having these stories are great for giving us examples of kind of like having a peek into, hey, if you do this, this is what could happen. So it can be really helpful to have that kind of information. But I think sometimes certain religious groups of people will take things so literally, and then they try to overlay it onto our life today. And then they make it into, this means, gay people can't get married, or this means, if you are divorced, you can't go to church with us, or, all these different, what seem like just wacky things.
Well, it's fucking crazy. I mean, it makes no sense.
Yeah.
It literally makes no sense to me. I really don't get it.
Well, and it goes back to what you're saying about love. If really you believe that the creator of the universe and the creator of each one of us is a loving, divine creator, then how could something that is divine and all-knowing and all-loving separate people or divide them
from itself?
From itself, exactly. Because sin, actually, the word sin means apart from God. So if you are, spiritual and you feel like you are connected to that source, then I would say you're not in sin. You know what I'm saying?
That's an interesting thought. Huh, that's a very interesting thought.
Deep thoughts with Karen.
Yeah, because I think one thing for me that's been interesting over the last couple of years is I believe that if I'm connected to source or God or the universe, that love and experience and divinity is within me just by feeling connected to it, right? And what's really interesting is when you see, if you go to a Christian church, right? You go to CCV or you go to Joel Osteen's church or, any of these churches, right? And you walk in. Mega churches, could be a mega church, could be a small church, could be, I'm just talking any Christian church. What's really interesting is when you go in, and this is like a memory from childhood, but when you go in, how few of the people in there number one, want to be there, and number two, look like they're connected to anything. They barely look like they're connected to themselves. It's like it's almost like off-putting and like very strange. Whereas like you take the opposite side of the coin and you go to like a spiritual event, right? Like a tribal event where there's drums and ecstatic dance and plant medicine and all these different things, and you see those people and you're like, whoa, there is life here. There is divinity in this space. Mm-hmm. And you don't get that at church. And I think that for me is one of the most telling things. Is it's like, all right, would I rather experience divinity in this area, or would I rather experience divinity in that area? And really, the only person whose opinion matters is my opinion, because it's my relationship to divinity, and everybody gets to pick their relationship with their divine essence, however you want to do it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the main things today that's so frustrating, is everybody wants to push their divine schedule onto other people. And I'm just like, bro, like, you do you. That's great. Go to church, love your God. That's awesome. I am going to go do mushrooms in the woods with my friends and have a spiritual experience that's unlike anything that you could ever even possibly imagine. But I'm also at the same time not pushing that onto you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Let me do me. I'll let you do you.
Well, and I think that with that, there's, like you said, the connection to the divine. I think that I do believe that the divine lives in me. I feel like I have a relationship with God that is within me. And I think part of our intuition is part of that. You know, some people may call it, I agree with that, the Holy Spirit, or, you know, I would say our intuition is that inner guidance system that we have. And I believe that is divine. I know over the last few years, especially, getting more connected with myself, like you're saying, you know, there's all these people walking around in church and they don't even look like they're connected to themselves, let alone other people. I've spent the last few years really concentrating heavily on listening to that intuitive voice, whatever that is. I don't know, this could be moving into a different part of our conversation, but do you feel like you hear God or feel or experience God in your life?
That's a great question. These are some of my favorite experiences ever. I have experiences where I will be in a place or with a person or doing an activity, and I feel like almost like an alignment, or like sometimes it sounds similar to a bell, or like a sometimes when I get chills, that's like a sign of what's happening. But like, I'll have these experiences where I will feel like all of my shit is perfectly aligned, and I'm having a divine moment, is basically what I'm feeling. And on the flip side, in my like everyday life, I would say my intuition, I think I have a pretty good intuition. Who knows if I do or not, but I think I do.
Feels good to you.
Yeah, it feels good to me. But I would say that, like, I mean, I listen to my intuition is my gut feeling. You know what I mean? Like, where I've had something happen to me recently where like your gut is just talking back and just, you know, roiling, and you don't feel good, and you're just like, ugh, this just does not feel good. And then you get rid of it, and you're all of a sudden you're at peace, you know, and you're like, oh wow, okay, that feels much better.
That's a huge indicator, you know, when you feel at peace with something. It's like, even if you have to like make a hard decision or something like that, and then all of a sudden you feel peace afterwards, it's like, okay, that was clearly somebody telling me I needed to do something.
Well, that, and I think your intuition, your gut feeling will damn near read the future. I mean, I have things that happen to me where like a big one for me is if I am driving or riding my motorcycle and I have like that gut feeling to slow down, I
Mhm.
always slow down. I always do it. And I would say probably 5 out of 10 times there's something in the road, a cop ahead, somebody did a weird move, like turning there. I would say about 50% of the time something weird happens right after I slow down, and I'm like, oh great,
Wow.
didn't die.
So you've been, and I know in our family, you growing up, we always taught you guys to listen to your gut. So you've been doing that for a long time, practicing.
Oh, years. I listen to my gut
Yeah.
constantly, and that's definitely something from when we were growing up, because you guys definitely always told us that. That's, I mean, it'll tell you things that you couldn't know.
Well, yeah, and that your parents can't even tell you.
Exactly. Do you feel like your intuition's pretty good?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so. I would say so. Now I have to say, that's why I was asking you how you experience it, because you said gut feeling. I actually hear stuff like
Like out loud?
yeah, like I'll hear a quiet voice in my own head.
That's lit. That's fucking super cool.
Well, and I did that whole thing with Kim Standeven, that Draw in the Magic, and
Uh-huh.
teaches about the clairs. The clairs are like
Clairaudience, all sorts of stuff.
clairaudience, clairessence, or clairsentience, and all those things. And it was interesting because when we were talking about that, that was one of the things, the clairaudience, is that I can hear stuff. And I always thought everybody else could too. I was just kind of like, I just assumed everybody did, but people experience their intuition in different ways. I'm not like here. It's not like friggin', what's that movie with Jim Carrey? The
Where
one
he's hearing stuff? I don't know.
Yeah, where he becomes God for a couple days. What the heck?
Oh, Bruce Almighty.
Bruce Almighty, yeah. Evan Almighty is the one with Steve
what a good
Carell.
movie, by the way.
But yeah, it's not like that, but it's definitely like a guide, like I'll feel a nudge, or like a tap on the shoulder kind of thing, like, hey, you need to pay attention to this. Which
yours are much more like sensory than mine are.
Well, I think the gut feeling is really sensory, don't you think?
I'm talking sensory, like as in senses, like you can hear it, you can feel it,
Yeah.
Mine's just, it's very guttural.
Maybe it's because I'm older. I've had more chance to like pay attention to it.
Yeah, maybe. That could be true.
Yeah. I remember years ago, gosh, it's when we lived in that house on Main Street, and I was feeling really doubtful about something.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when we used to go to church all the time. And I was kind of being snarky with God. And I was just like, yeah, you want me to know something? Tell me what you want me to know. And I opened up the Bible, and I was just kind of like, close my eyes and put my finger on a page. And I looked at it, and I can't remember what the verse is now, but it was basically talking about doubting Thomas.
Oh, you're kidding me.
It was hilarious. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's a fucking comedian.
Yeah, that is hysterical. That is so funny. Well, and I think that's the other thing, getting back to our conversation before, is I think there are people out there that have had very visceral, real, like interactions with God, right? And I think that, so I don't want anybody to think that I'm discounting their relationship with their God, because I do believe that people's relationship with their God can be powerful, visceral, and unbelievably transformative. Mm-hmm. I think that everybody's relationship with their higher power is different, though. But I do believe that there are some people out there that have had really, really neat experiences with God.
Yeah. Well, our dad's cousin Laura, was well, back in the day, I mean, she was extremely devout Christian and brought lots of people to God to Christianity. She was someone who was in an abusive relationship. She had a lot of kids. She homeschooled them all. And she was dying of cancer and still had this like amazing faith in God that that she was being held and taken care of and exactly where she needed to be. I mean, her faith was super strong and unshakable, seriously. And I mean, at her funeral, she died when, she was in her late 30s. There was hundreds of people at her funeral who were all giving testimony to how she brought them to Christ and brought them, to faith in God. And now, what was my point? My point is, it's a beautiful thing to have a relationship with the divine. I mean, it not only gives people a sense of certainty and love and connection, which are human needs that we all need to have. And I think that sometimes in that certainty, people just get very rigid in their beliefs about how it's supposed to look, rather than letting each person have their own relationship with God and letting it be whatever it is. I mean, if he's really the God of the universe, or she, whatever it is, it's like, if this is really the creator of the universe, and you look at all the magnificent things in nature and just how the planets work and all these different things, I'm pretty sure that there's not just one tiny little road, to have that relationship with your creator.
I agree. I agree 100%. And to your point, I think the reason people get weird about it is because how people grow up in the culture is that if you believe something and I believe something different, one of us has to be wrong. Yes. But I think what you're saying is that the God of the universe can have a relationship with you that looks one way, and have a relationship with me that looks one way, and have a relationship with somebody in sub-Saharan Africa that looks one way, and they can all be correct. Nobody has to be wrong.
I mean, let's just say, how about we just consider that? You know what I mean? Just the consideration that could be the way it is, rather than like the right-wrong paradigm. Mm-hmm. Because wrong makes one person wrong. So if you are right, then I'm wrong. And nobody wants to be wrong. Nobody wants to be ostracized or separated. And
I don't think anybody has to be wrong either.
Exactly.
I mean, you're talking about putting human brain power and human logical fallacies and attaching them to a divine essence, and you're going to try and tell me that your way is right? Motherfucker, it's probably not. And that's not bad, but I'm just saying that your way is your way. And I think that there could be literally infinitesimal other options to experience that.
Yeah.
And your way is still the right way.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, if God has put together all of these amazing humans, and when you look at just the fact that we're here is a miracle in itself, right? Just the chances of each one of us being here on the planet is like a 1 in 4 trillion
Trillions,
or something.
yeah, trillions.
Crazy chance that the swimmer actually met the egg and created you. Mm-hmm. It's like, if there are those kind of odds, I mean, you're each one of us who is trying to stay in the right wrong paradigm is actually trying to put on the creator of the universe a human concept or a human thought when
a human rule.
Yeah, when you're talking about something that is not human. So
And
how could it
ruleless.
Yeah. And
I
I
mean,
get it makes
you could
people
create a
feel really
universe, you're pretty much,
uncomfortable. You know,
oh,
I think if
for
we
sure.
understand that it's in our discomfort that we try to put these constructs on each other and make these rules and lanes that we're supposed to follow is really just a way to make ourselves feel good. You know, it's a way to make ourselves feel certain that we're okay. Because if you don't, then it's like, whoa, well then what are our options? They're endless. There's so
Endless.
many possibilities. And I think it scares the shit out of people.
It
frankly.
does scare the shit out of people because I mean, imagine you go to what's the place called? Buc-ee's in Texas, right?
The gas station, the giant
The gas station, the giant gas station. You walk in and there's a whole wall of beef jerky, right? And the whole wall of beef jerky is standing there right in front of you, right? There's 1,000 options, let's say. And all of a sudden you're like, you can't even pick an option because there's so many options.
Yeah.
And I think to what you were just saying is there's so many options for people out there and how to experience divinity now that they take their one option and then they hold on to that option so that they don't have to have the uncomfortable feeling of seeing all of the options.
Yeah. There's this crazy fly that keeps following around.
Trust me, I can see it on your webcam.
Well, and that is a really great point. When you have so many options, it's like, how do people choose what to do? And I have a suggestion for people. It seems like you just ask, right? You get quiet and you get connected with yourself, and whatever you call your God that you ask, you know, what do you want me to know? What am I here for? Or how do I relate to you? And start acting like you want to have a relationship with whatever that divine being is for you. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be something that you know what it is right away. Could it be a journey that you go on and learn how you experience that divinity?
Oh, and almost absolutely it will be a journey. One of my most precious moments in life that I love every time I see it is when you see somebody and you look at them and you're like, you can almost see the divinity within them. Like you're at like a bass show, or you're at sometimes even at a bar, where like you'll see somebody and you look at them and you're just like, wow, you look divine, you feel divine, you have divine energy, you're just free and full of love. And that is one of my favorite things to look at. And it's also one of my favorite things to try and embody.
That's so cool. You're really good about that too. You're a person who will tell people when you meet them or see them that what you love about them, which is
for sure
a beautiful quality to have, because I think all of us need to know that more often, that we're cared for, or people see us. People just want to be seen.
People just want to be seen. They want to be seen so bad. Yeah, it's really interesting. I saw it was a TikTok probably this week sometime, and it was about every time you engage with love, you engage with divinity.
Yeah,
which feels totally correct.
Yeah, I would say. And I don't think that, like I can remember years ago when like, I would say I accepted Christ as my savior when just before we got married. So 1993.
The first or second time?
1993 and then 2011. Divorced and then married the same guy, for people who don't know.
It's true love right there. Okay.
And yeah, I would say we're soulmates. Anyhow, I digress. What was the point of what I was saying? I accepted Christ into my life and started to get to know what that was for me. And I had somebody tell me, I'm like, well, how do you get to know who God is? And through my own journey, I learned that you just treat it like you would when you meet anybody. It's like when you meet someone, you want to get to know them. You want to ask them questions, and what do they like? What do they not like? What do I need to know about you? What's cool about you? What do you like
love to do? Yeah, exactly. What engages your soul?
Yeah. And so by spending time with the divine, however you do that, I mean, there's outside here, we have a river down the hill, and there's people who come and drum at the river, and people who come and hang out in the river naked, and you could tell they're like doing like spiritual things. And there's some people who like to meditate or dance and do there's just so many different things. I can't even think of them all right now, but there's so many different things that you can do to get connected with the divine. And I think the point is you're trying to connect with it so that you can figure out what it's telling you, or why are we all here? What is your purpose in being here? Because I feel like each one of us has a purpose in being here. And sometimes we live in ways that don't really reflect that. We get so busy doing, going to work and going grocery shopping and doing things. And maybe we go out once in a while and spend time with friends and stuff. But it's like the fact that you're here, and it was such a miracle that you're here for a reason. So.
And the reason is not to go work 40 hours a week and collect a paycheck. Right. I can guarantee you that.
Right. You're here for relationship. I mean, I think that's really, if there's one thing we can all agree on, it's that connecting with the divine in your life and creating a relationship, there's something there that's supposed to 100%. Be telling us something, what is it? I mean, I feel that with you guys, you have 2 sisters and yourself. And as a mom, I know for myself, there's definitely a feeling of purpose that I was here to love you guys unconditionally, but to connect you with different things and to be on the journey with you. I mean, there's definitely a feeling of purpose that I would say I have as a parent. Mm-hmm. But I would say that there's other things too. I kind of feel like, everything happens for a reason. And I think in hindsight, you can see breadcrumbs of meaning in why we're here. And, what am I supposed to be learning from all of this? Do you get that?
I do get that. And I think the longer you're around, the better perspective you have on like why certain things happen and certain things don't. Because like there's certain things, I mean, I'm only 26 years old, and I've had things happen in my life where I wanted them so badly and they didn't happen. And now looking back on it, you're like, oh, thank God I didn't do that.
Thank God you unanswered prayers. I'm pretty sure that's a country song.
Yeah, it's got to be a country song or a saying for sure, because that's super accurate. And I mean, I think the other thing that I think we're here for is to like to learn lessons and then pass those lessons down to the offspring. And I think as a species, we're pretty bad at that, because I think everybody like learns the rules, right? The rules of society, and then they stop learning the lessons because they're following the
Yeah.
rules. And
Well, I
so
think that's what happens is people turn these lessons into rules, and it's like, how about you just keep them as lessons?
it doesn't have to be a rule. It can just be a
Right.
lesson. Because that's one thing from growing up in our household that was very apparent was everything's a learning lesson and they never end. You will have learning lessons till you die. Now, there's a clear differentiator between me and my two sisters where I love hearing people's opinions on the lessons they've learned, because if it's a lesson that I never want to have to experience, I'll just take them at their word for it. I'll learn the lesson through chatting, and then I don't have to go learn that lesson. Whereas other people, they have to go learn every lesson themselves
Yeah.
to learn the lesson.
Well, and I think, that's just
It's not a bad thing.
Yeah, it's not right or wrong. It's just a difference in humans, right? Sometimes,
Yeah.
and even in subject matter too, because there's some things that I'll take face value what somebody says and learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's other things I'm like, I'm not going for it. I'm going to do it myself.
Perfect. Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. You summarized it perfectly. Yeah. And it is really interesting because, I mean, when you think about like the society we live in today, right? And the rules imposed on us by the people that run it. And you're like, you see these people, and in your tribal brain, you're like, oh, they're the boss. They lead us. And in actuality, they don't. In fact, most of them are pretty poor leaders. And it's really interesting when all of a sudden you really take a critical look at who leads, whether it's the United States or Britain or any country. Everybody wants to use this tribal mentality as, we're going to let this one person lead us around. And it's like, no, and not only no, but like, you don't even have to let them affect you almost at all. Just by doing your own thing and living your own life and doing things that you find enjoyable. Mm-hmm. If you turn off the TV and you don't read the news, your life is pretty great. My life is pretty drama-free.
That's like a whole other podcast, is the crazy media, how it's turned into just a circus of trying to scare the shit out of people to get ratings. Yes. So that people won't pay attention to what they're saying and they get paid. I mean, that's just like
we should talk about that in another podcast.
We should talk about that. And maybe people
I've made a note
if they want to hear that conversation.
Yeah. Or if they don't want to hear that conversation.
Oh my God. Yeah. So I think out of everything that we're saying here right now, it's kind of like, I would say what I'm hearing from you and what I'm saying also is, I don't think that there's any like right or wrong, and that I would encourage people to explore the divine themselves.
I agree 100%. And I also think one thing to add to your summarization is that in doing that, you will get backlash.
Oh, yeah.
From people. And that is, just realize that it's coming, and also realize that the backlash is a good thing, and it will separate you from the people that don't have your best interest at heart.
Yeah, well, I agree with, when you get backlash, you're getting the disapproval of the people who you don't want to hang out with anyway.
Correct.
Now, like that sort of disapproval is proving to you the people who either don't get you, aren't in alignment with kind of how you believe. Mm-hmm. Because that's what I was going to say before, is I don't think God has a problem with you questioning him or her, whoever. I don't think the divine has a problem with you exploring and figuring out what you really believe. It's not for, some guy in a robe to come over and, tell you this is what you believe. It's for you to have that relationship yourself with the divine and come up with what really is the divine saying to you in this world. Because I feel like we're all connected. There's like a web of connection between all of us. And if we could really just embrace that people think differently about different things and, kind of like, can't we all just get along? It'd be real nice rather than, trying to make other people wrong and creating all the division, because I think the world, especially today, could use a lot more love and kindness.
A lot more love and kindness. I was literally getting chills thinking about my response to what you just said.
Okay.
You had said that you don't think that the divine has a problem with you questioning.
Yeah.
And I think it's that and the opposite. I think the divine's favorite thing is when you question what it is and what your relationship to it is. I think that is its all-time 100% favorite thing, because that interaction right there where you go, what are you? What do you do? How do you do this? That right there is where the relationship starts. That's how the relationship builds, is questioning it. If you blindly just believe something, there is no relationship.
Well, correct. That's what love is. I mean, if you think about it, you meet a girl, right? You want to know all about her. And if she doesn't want to know or get to know you, you're kind of like, you don't even want to know me.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want that.
Let's go. That was a good first podcast, Mom. That was a lot of fun.
All right.
So for anybody listening, follow us on all the socials, Twitter, Insta. We don't have a Reddit page, so you're SOL there. But Facebook, Karen's on Facebook quite a bit. You will not find me there. And find us on all podcast platforms. We love you all.